Hi, friend. Welcome to Holly's Highlights, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you to intentionally live your life full of purpose. I'm your host, Holly Kirby, motivational speaker, leadership cultivator, marketing strategist, and personal cheerleader. Let's check out today's highlight. Today's episode is all about emergency preparedness, and I have a resource to help you put what you learn into action. Sign up for my monthly email at www.hollykirby.com. Each month, I share practical resources, leadership tools, favorite recipes, special offers, and so much more. And in my next email, you'll get a free emergency preparedness checklist to help your family get ready for the unexpected. That's www.hollykirby.com. Sign up today and let's get prepared together. As we head into another school year, there is a lot on our minds. New teachers, new schedules, school supplies, activities, sports, work, and of course, trying to get everyone where they need to be. At least that's my issue. In fact, we got up this morning. I had one child to one place on time and the other one, I was completely late. So we just have our moments, right? But this is also a good time to think beyond the backpacks and the school supplies and all of our busy schedules, and really talk about something we all hope we never have to use, but we should always be prepared for. And that is, what would we do if an emergency happened? And the reality is, emergency preparedness isn't just for parents or students. Whether you're heading back to school, you're going back to work, living on your own, raising a family, or if you're just simply going about your normal routine, having a little preparation in place can make a huge difference when something unexpected happens. So today we're talking about what it really means to be ready when it matters and some practical steps that every family can take to be better prepared, because we could all use that. Joining us today is Bryan Stinson, an emergency preparedness and community outreach specialist. He's with the Utah Division of Emergency Management and the lead for the division's Be Ready Utah Preparedness Outreach Program as well. Bryan has spent years researching and teaching and helping individuals and families prepare for emergencies. I'm so grateful to have him with us today. His passion for preparedness started very early and was strengthened through his experience in the film industry and then the emergency preparedness retail. And it continued to grow through his CERT training and master's degree in leadership with an emphasis in disaster preparedness. So truly no one better to be with us today. Bryan has a great philosophy that any time is a good time to talk about emergency preparedness. So we're going to do just that. Welcome, Bryan.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So let's start with the big picture, because I think a lot of people hear the words emergency preparedness and they immediately think, that's probably something I should do someday, right? So when you talk to families and students and individuals about emergency preparedness, what do you wish that more people understood about why preparation matters?
Well, there's a lot of times that people think it's never going to happen to me. This is only something that I see in the movies or something like that. Or they think I'll do it tomorrow. They say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's never too late to prepare for an emergency until it is. It's important that we each take personal responsibility for ourselves and for our families and our safety. If something happens, something so simple as, a power outage, the utilities going out, that happens to all of us. Those can be minor emergencies, as well as larger things like earthquakes or hurricanes or something like that. Remember that depending on the size of the emergency, good chances it's the government, your neighbors, your church, they're not going to be able to show up. They're going to be taking care of themselves. And it could be 3 days, 5 days, or maybe even longer that you might be on your own. So depending on the size of the incident, you may not have the resources that you're used to. There's a lot of times, because people know that I do emergency preparedness, and I start talking about something emergency preparedness related, and they say, oh, something happens, I'm coming to your house. And I say, okay, that's fine, but I've got a responsibility to take care of my family. I know that you want to take care of your family as well, but what happens if the emergency happens and my house is the one that is underwater or destroyed in some way, and I come knocking on your door? We
Good point.
all have a responsibility to take care of ourselves, our families, and then have a little bit of extra that, yes, we can reach out and help others in our community.
I know for us here just recently, we have that heat wave going on and our electricity went out and it went out for 5.5 hours. And fortunately that night, my son and I had a play in another city. So we were able to go there. We were fine. But when we came back, I think we were home maybe 30 minutes with it being out. Again, 5.5 hours it had been out total. But that 30-minute time frame, I thought my son was going to go crazy. He was like, what do we do? I'm like, we're fine. We prepared for this. So I think looking at just overall, when we look at the different areas that we might be in listening today, are there particular emergencies or disasters that people should be thinking about based on where they live? Or is there a basic level of preparedness that applies pretty much to everyone?
There's basic emergency preparedness that does cover everything. And some of that does go into knowing what potential hazards are possible in the area that you live. Like, for example, where I live in Utah, you live in Utah, one of the big ones that we always talk about is earthquakes. Now, we don't talk about hurricanes very much because there's never really been a hurricane and there can't really be one in Utah. But it's not really even the hazards necessarily that we're preparing for, but the impacts of those hazards. So let's take, for example, earthquake. What are some of the things that could happen in an earthquake? Power outage. Maybe the utilities go out. You don't have water. You don't have sewer. Communications are broken or not functional. As we prepare for those impacts, that's more universal in preparing for emergencies. So basic emergency preparedness kinds of things we want to do: be informed about the hazards and the impacts that those will cause to your life. Now, specific things to hazards that you do need to prepare for are something called protective actions. Now, what are protective actions? Those are the things that you need to do to survive the immediate impact of that disaster. Okay, like what? For example, in elementary school, many of us probably learned what to do if your clothes catch on fire. What do we do if our clothes catch on fire?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll. That is the
Woohoo!
protective action for if your clothes are on fire. Now, here in Utah and throughout the country, again, we're talking about earthquakes. Do you know the protective action for an earthquake?
I'm actually a little concerned on this one because I feel like it changed. As an elementary student, I remember getting underneath our desks and holding onto the legs. But then a
Okay,
few years ago, about the time of COVID, we had one here. And of course, we were
right.
in bed. So we hopped up and we got underneath the door frame because that used to be the second thing that they suggested. But then I hear the door frame is not a thing anymore. So maybe give us some more insight here.
Okay, the protective action you want to remember for earthquake is drop, because you don't want the earthquake throwing you to the ground. If you put yourself on the ground, you're much less likely to be injured. Plus, you're not going to be able to walk around if there is shaking. So drop, cover. The most important part of our bodies for most of us is probably our head.
Yeah.
So cover your head, drop, cover. And then, like you said before, your desk, hold on. If you're able to get underneath some kind of sturdy structure, like a desk, like even a chair or something like that, drop, cover your head, and hold on to that, because you might actually be thrown out from underneath that cover, or that cover could move away from you.
Okay.
Protective action for earthquake: drop, cover, hold on. We don't do the doorway thing anymore because doorways, they're not as protective as we once thought.
Yeah.
There were people that were actually, because of doors slamming, were getting injured because limbs would be caught in those slamming doors. And a lot of the doors inside your home, they're not structural. They're more of just a facade wall. It's not a structural wall. So that wall could get a little teetery. So yes, drop,
That
cover,
makes
hold
sense.
on is what you want to focus on for earthquake. So protective actions, that's one of the things that you want to think about based on where you live. You also want to have communication plans, reunification plans. How are you and your family going to get back together? Sheltering at home plans. Maybe you need to have evacuation plans as well. Also, emergency kits and supplies. And when you have taken care of yourself and your family, like I said before, be ready to help others.
I like it. Now let's bring this back into the back to school season that we're in right now, because that's pretty much what prompted this. Is not only that blackout that we had of the heat wave, but then also my son just returned to school. And so we're thinking through like, okay, if they have to deal now with shootings. And so it's okay, if this happens, let's talk through what we're gonna do. So if you're a parent sending your child to school right now, or you're a college student, right? What are a few things that you should know before that first emergency happens?
Some of the first things you want to know are, does the school have emergency plans and what are they? You also want to be going to school with your own emergency plans as well. I talked about communication plans. How are you going to communicate with family and other loved ones? How are you going to reunify with your family or other loved ones? And evacuation plans. If you need to get off of the campus, where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? As an adult, how are you going to get home if you're going to leave campus? Do you have a means of, if you're not able to get to your vehicle, do you know how you can walk there or take another form of transportation? So know the school emergency plans. If there isn't one, or it's not up to the standards that you feel would be the best, you can volunteer to help your school to implement emergency plans, or even just volunteer to help with those emergency plans as well.
Yeah, I think the thing that's always on my mind and my son's actually, as we've talked through it, is just that reconnection. How do we reconnect? Because in an emergency, that can be one of the most stressful things is just not knowing where your people are. So what would you recommend every family establish as its emergency communication and reunification plan, no matter where they're at?
Well, the first thing, what do we think about for communications nowadays, normally in blue sky days? Our cell phones. Are phones going to work in an emergency situation? The answer is maybe. They might work. I would recommend having a text group already established on your phone that everybody else is a part of, so you don't need to be texting grandma and grandpa and Uncle Joe and Aunt Susie and little Billy and little Susie. So it's everybody gets that message. You only have to type it once, it goes out. Now, again, what do you do if phones don't work? I know for myself that when I first got a cell phone, I stopped memorizing phone numbers. Actually, even one of the jokes here at home is dad doesn't know mom's number, even though we've been married forever. So I actually carry in my wallet a list of all the emergency numbers that I might need to contact if I can't remember those numbers. Even if you're good at memorizing, in a stressful situation, you
It's
might
out the
not
door.
remember those numbers,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't have your phone, or your phone doesn't have power, maybe you can borrow somebody else's phone, or you can use a landline and call those emergency numbers. Another thing that you need to do is establish an out of the area emergency contact. Now, what is that? Well, in an emergency situation, around that emergency, everybody is going to be calling and texting everybody else. So instead of trying to make a phone call within that area where the disaster is happening, if you have an emergency contact outside of the area, now in some smaller states, they say out of state. Here in Utah, we're a pretty big state. So maybe somebody out of the county, or maybe a couple of counties over, a trusted family member or a friend, everybody in the family texts. Don't call, especially during a disaster, because that takes up more phone space. But everybody texts to Aunt Mabel that lives a few counties over and says, this is where I am, I'm okay, and I'm heading to our emergency meeting place. That way, mom and dad can then text Aunt Mabel, or Aunt Mabel can text mom and dad back and say, little Billy and little Susie, they've all checked in, and they're safe, and this is where they're going. So have an out of area emergency contact and keep that on that emergency contact list in your wallet or your purse. You also need to have a reunification plan. If their phones are completely out, everybody knows, okay, our primary place that we are going to meet as a family is at home. But what happens if the disaster or the emergency is in your neighborhood and your neighborhood has been evacuated? You need to have a secondary meeting place, someplace outside of your neighborhood. I recommend 2 to 3 miles, someplace that's still within walking distance for your family members. Everybody knows exactly where that is to go. It would be maybe the restaurant that we all like. We meet at this particular corner of the restaurant, a very specific place, not just the restaurant, but a specific corner of the restaurant so we all can see where we are. Let's pull it back in a little bit more. What if everybody's at home? It's the middle of night, and maybe there's a house fire, something we all need to evacuate out of our home. Our immediate home is not safe, but we don't need to go to that 2 or 3 miles away. We need to have something that's in very close proximity to our home as another family meeting place. Maybe the park across the street or a neighbor's house, a couple of homes down from our house. Someplace that's close enough that we can still see our home, but a place that we can quickly get to in a matter of minutes rather than the 2 to 3 miles it would take to get away. And again, a very specific place. If you're in the park across the street, not just the park across the street, because in the chaos of maybe it's dark out, you've got emergency vehicles responding to this, you've got lights, you've got sound, you've got neighbors that are congregating all around. There's chaos, not just the park across the street, but maybe this specific bench, everybody comes and meets here in the event of something like a house fire. So you need to have 3 meeting places, your home, one just outside of the home, and then something 2 to 3 miles away from your home. And practice walking there and going there as a family. Especially, that's really important for little kids, especially, because that's how they're going to remember it. They're going to remember, let's go to this park bench and I sit here till mommy and daddy or another trusted adult comes to get me. But they need to know that they stay there in those places until we all get together.
Oh my gosh, I could just re-listen to what you just said probably 10,000 times. That is what I needed today. When you were mentioning the text being like all in one thread, we have a family thread. My issue is
Good.
that our family changes the name. So my nephew just had a baby earlier this year, and so they renamed it his name. And so it was like, wait, what happened to our family thread? Oh yeah, it's, the baby's name. And then we just recently had another nephew got married, and so they switched it to their names and their wedding. And it was like, wait, I thought we were looking for the baby. And so
Right.
for us, it's going to be the struggle of what is it, what's our current situation and what is our family thread name. So I like what you said about writing down the names and the phone numbers and putting them in your wallet so that, yeah, you have that and you're able to get a hold of everyone. I think that's going to be on my to-do list tonight. So just hearing what you just shared right there, I think around our family dinner tonight, we're going to be looking at, yeah, who we're going to contact outside of our area. As far as the extra meeting spot, I hadn't thought about that. So if you're all at home, where do you meet? Because my dad is our neighbor. So it's not like we can just, go to grandpa's house. We need to find something a little bit more exterior from that or outside of that. And then, of course, writing down those numbers. Those are all very, very good suggestions and should be requirements for us to do tonight, right? So those are wonderful. Thank you.
Let me say one more thing about that. You're correct that a lot of times those text threads, they keep changing.
Mhm.
There's other options you can do of there are many apps that you can have, group communication apps, and put together a family group there. It's easy to add people and delete people as necessary into these group apps. You can do your own research and find out which one would work best for you and your family, but that might be an even better option so we're not always changing,
Yes.
having 5 or 6 different family group texts.
Yes, GroupMe, Slack, all great apps. Perfect.
Sure.
What about families with teenagers or young adults who may be driving, or working, going to school, or just spending much of their day away from home? Anything we need to do to prepare them differently? Anything that to kind of help them a little bit more as there's so much on the go?
There's things you can do if you're talking about driving. Of course, you want to have an emergency kit for the vehicle. There's certain things in there, jumper cables, battery chargers, jacks for changing tires, those kinds of things, plus just normal things like have some food and water and blankets and those kinds of things in the car. And if you want, you can go to bereadyutah.gov and look up vehicle emergency kit. And we've got a great list of things that you can do for putting together a vehicle emergency kit. The most important thing that you really want to do to prepare for emergencies, it's not going out and getting or gathering a bunch of stuff. It's having knowledge, knowing what to do when an emergency happens, and then practicing it so that you know and you're comfortable with being able to respond to that. I think about a friend of mine, her daughter was in a pretty serious car wreck. One of her friends was pretty badly injured, but because she was prepared beforehand, not just with stuff, but knowledge of first aid, she was able to actually save her friend's life. And also, she was able to keep the others in the vehicle calm because she knew what to do. She knew, call 911. Let's get off the road to a safe spot, wait for the emergency responders to come. And because they'd practiced those things as a family and they'd talked about them and made plans, she knew what to do. And knowing what to do is so very much more important than just having stuff.
Now you mentioned things, and although I realize that you emphasize the things aren't the things to have, it's more of that head knowledge. What are the basic emergency supplies that you would recommend every household have on hand? Because my neighbor down the street has like a 250-gallon water tank, and I'm like, yeah, I just don't have place for that. So what are the basics that every household should have?
Well, I would always start, again, knowledge,
Hmm.
but then also have a disaster supply kit. Now, disaster supply kit, what's that? Well, 72-hour kit, 96-hour kit, go bag, evacuation kit, whatever you want to call it. We just call it disaster supply kit because that doesn't imply this is only for this number of days or this amount of time. And you can use your disaster supply kit at home. You don't have to evacuate with it to be able to use the supplies from your kit. So we recommend a disaster supply kit, again, whatever you want to call it, because that'll help you for 3 days, 5 days, or maybe a week or so of the basic things that you and your family need to survive. Recommend that each person in your family has their own separate disaster supply kit. Even the infant that can't carry his or her own, they should all have their own separate disaster supply kit tailored to their needs and abilities. So that's one of the first things I would worry about. And you can go to bereadyutah.gov and look up disaster supply kit. And we've got a great list of suggestions for things to put in your disaster supply kit. Now, let me say one thing about you can go online and you can find tons of lists of what other people think are important things to put in your emergency supplies. Remember, those are other people's ideas of what they think they need in their emergency scenarios. It's okay for you to have something different in your disaster supply kit or other emergency supplies, as long as it still fulfills that survival need, whether it be water, food, shelter, first aid, etc. You don't have to do the exact same thing that other people have. So you can go to bereadyutah.gov and find our disaster supply kit. We, of course, have one of the better disaster supply kit lists, but make it your own list. Okay, so disaster supply kit. The other thing I would really recommend is 2 weeks of stored water. Now, what does 2 weeks of stored water look like? The average American uses like 150 to 200 gallons of water every single day. So how are you going to store that much water? You're not going to store that much water.
Well, my
The
neighbor does.
recommend Okay, all right. But okay, that'll get them through a day,
Yeah.
but it's recommended to store at least 1 full gallon of water per person per day for 2 full weeks. So each person a minimum of 14 gallons. I don't know if you've ever tried to live on only 1 gallon of water a day. That's a gallon for drinking, a gallon for hygiene and sanitation. That's a gallon for washing your dishes and doing your laundry. And you're probably not going to be doing those things for a few days, but that's bare bones minimum. 2 weeks would be 14 gallons of water per person in your home. That's actually doable. You talk about your neighbor with 250 gallons. That would get through an average family of four for many weeks. Okay, so 2 weeks of stored water, a month of easy to prepare and ready to eat food. I'm not talking about a freezer full. These are things that are easy to prepare. Maybe you don't need any heat or cooking instruments like granola bars, high calorie kinds of things. Maybe you could do mac and cheese if you can figure out how to boil water in your home, have a means of safely boiling some water, but you might not have the electricity that you're used to. So, a month of easy to prepare, ready to eat foods. Blankets. You can never have too many blankets. You can use them for so many things. If it's cold, pile on the blankets even more. Add those extra layers of insulation. Of course, first aid supplies, not just kits, but beyond kits. Most of the first aid kits that you buy, it's really just a souped up Band-Aid dispenser. So have some other supplies beyond just the Band-Aids, maybe some personal over-the-counter medications. Make sure that you also have prescriptions, enough to last you a couple of weeks. And then also copies of important documents. Make sure that something happens, you have a way of identifying who you are. You have a means of contacting your insurance company, and that you have all of your insurance accounts ready to share with them. We've already talked about contact information. Have written copies of all your emergency contacts and your financial information, the name of your bank, their email, your account numbers, those kinds of things. That'll help you a lot more with the recovery after things start to come back together. There's some of the basic things that I'd recommend that you have in your household. That's not the end of the list, but that's kind of some of the basics that I'd start with.
Yeah, those are great. Some things that keep going through my mind. One, I need to stock up on pet supplies. As you were talking about, each family is different. I think our poor dog, because I just replenish his every Sunday, and that's just kind of my thought. But I never have extra on hand, so I thought about that as you were talking about just customizing per family. And then I don't know about others listening, but my mom, she would always say flashlights was a major one, and so I think that is always when I think emergency preparedness, I think where are the flashlights? So we're a family of 20 flashlights type things. So again, it just to each their own, right? A little different, a little different. Is there one thing though that people commonly forget to include in their emergency supplies?
Well, you mentioned pets, and that is usually one of the things that people forget, whether it's evacuation or having those extra pet supplies, including medications. They're a member of the family as well. Make sure that their needs are taken care of. The other thing that we don't like to talk about, hygiene and sanitation. What do you do if there's no running water and you can't flush the toilets? Well, that's something that a lot of people have not even thought of, and a lot of times don't even want to think of. But there are things that you can do. You can go to bereadyutah.gov and check out hygiene and sanitation, and there's a whole list of things you can do for a hygiene kit, for a sanitation kit. We recommend having a 2-bucket system, one for the liquid, one for the solid. I'll keep this very PG.
Right now, I'm just so thankful for my daughter who is a hunter because she has, all the things to be able to boil the water, and she's already pre-thought majority of these things because that's what they need when they go out hunting.
A lot of outdoor skills. You bring up
Yeah.
hunting, but even just camping,
Yeah.
those are great ways to practice these emergency preparedness principles when it's not a life-threatening situation. You go out, learn how to set up a tent, maybe how to light a fire, how to make pancakes without a blender over a campfire, or we get a lot of boo-boos learning some first aid principles. Go camping with your family, and even if things completely collapse and it's a miserable experience, you still gained some experience and knowledge about what doesn't work. Sometimes learning what doesn't work is just as important as learning what does work.
You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we've talked about kind of the home, we've talked about the car, although I have learned you have to be careful what you share with your kids or in your car for preparedness. I have one of those, I don't know what they're called, but you can knock on the window and it breaks the glass. And then on the other
Okay.
side, you can even, rip your seatbelt type thing. And my son has been fascinated with that it's a constant conversation. You may not tap on the glass with this. You may not rip our car seats with this. So yeah, some things we need to be a little cautious of there. But then again, we're, as we mentioned, we're not always at home. So what other things might we need to be prepared for in the sense of maybe it's at work? And of course we can check with our work to see what their workplace emergency plan is. But even going beyond that, you mentioned the neighbor coming to you and not necessarily being able to meet their needs, whether it be quantity or because you're where the disaster happened. But yeah, thinking about workplace, neighbors, community, elderly family members, friends who live alone, volunteering, personal emergencies, all of those things, kind of what might you have to say on some of those notes?
Well, let's go back just a little bit to your comment about your son and the glass breaker.
Yes.
That's not something you want to practice on your own car,
No,
but
no.
that interest means that he would like to know how to do it. Have you practiced with your glass breaker or your seatbelt cutter?
I
My
did.
guess,
I
you
did on
did.
a vase. I did on a vase.
Well, just as a thought, one thing that you might be able to do with your family is go to your local junkyard and say, hey, we'd like to practice this out. You might need to sign a waiver for something about being in the junkyard, but they might let you practice it as a family in an old junker car. That might be something so that everybody gets the opportunity to see, how does this work? That's something to do. And following those same line of thought, a lot of people have never tried a fire extinguisher either. What do we do? I've never done that and I don't know how to do that. And there's a fire right now. I've usually only have seconds before the fire gets out of control. When your fire extinguisher expires, take it in the backyard and have everybody practice using that fire extinguisher. Anything you can do to promote the interest in these tools or how they work, practice with them so that everybody is confident with that. And it's a fun thing to do as well.
I'm actually really stuck on going to the junkyard. Like I had never thought of that before. We do date nights in our family where I date my kids and I'm thinking that's going to be mine and my son's next date night is going to the junkyard. And I think
That's
that actually
awesome.
sounds a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, now back to your other question. Well, the first principle, as if you've ever flown in an airplane, what does the helper do? They say take care of yourself first. That's one of the main principles. Take care of yourself first, because then you are physically and mentally and emotionally able to help others. Your next line is your family members. Make sure that you've taken care of them as well. And then once you've taken care of yourself and your family, then you can reach out to your neighbors. There's a lot of different things that you can do. You can start a group or even just reach out to, you mentioned grandparents, but is there anybody in your neighborhood that maybe an older adult, maybe a young family with lots of kids, or a single mom with kids that you could reach out to and be a helping hand in helping that person or that group prepare for emergencies? Is there somebody in your neighborhood maybe with access and functional needs, whether it's physical, cognitive, auditory issues, just anything like that? You can reach out to them and say, hey, here's some principles for emergency preparedness. I would love to help you. The responsibility is still on that person, but you can reach out and say, I'm willing to help you in the event of an emergency. For elderly parents, something like that, they need to have a support group of people that maybe a neighbor knows that in the event of an emergency, after taking care of themselves and their family, they come over to the older adult and help them to maybe get out of bed, get out of the chair, get into the car. That's part of their emergency plan. So yeah, just being aware of those around you. Speaking about emergency preparedness with those around you. Now, you don't necessarily want to share all of your plans of everything that you have with everybody around you. That's a
Right.
personal thing,
Hmm.
but you can talk about emergency preparedness in general and help people to know things they can do and things that you can do to help support. Other things you can do, many communities have A CERT group, that's the Community Emergency Response Team. You can check with your local county emergency manager and see if your county is doing CERT. That's something you can do that trains you how to safely help others in your neighborhood in the event of a disaster. So there's lots of different things to do. The Red Cross, they accept volunteers. Just talk to your emergency manager and see if he or she has ideas of things that you can do to volunteer to help in emergencies in your neighborhood.
Great suggestions. You just keep adding to my to-do list. I think one thing that you mentioned right there is just getting our neighbors together, that communication. Communication is key. We've always done, it was my mom who has passed away, who used to be kind of the head of it for our neighborhood. And it kind of got passed on to me where we update, a map of our neighborhood and fill in everyone's information. So we know how many people live at each house. We know, who to account for, their phone number, so forth. But it sounds like I need to have another block party and just get together and kind of find out some updates and just make sure we're all on the same page to be able to help each other. So it's really good.
I
Go ahead.
like what you said about block party.
Yeah.
If you put out, hey, we're having a block party in my front yard here, bring a plate of cookies. We're going to have some dancing, and I'll hand out this little thing about emergency preparedness. But if you say, we're going to have an emergency preparedness meeting
No
at
one shows.
my house,
Yeah.
no one's going to
Yeah.
show. So yeah, do that. You've got to establish those relationships with your neighbors so
Yeah.
that there is that trust, so that you can have those a little bit more difficult conversations.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about what to do beforehand, but let's say something actually happens, right? So your phone sends an emergency alert, or you hear those sirens, there's an earthquake, a wildfire, flood, severe storm, you name it, whatever emergency it might be. What is the first thing that people should do when an emergency is happening?
The initial incident, where the earthquake, or you evacuated from the area, whatever that protective action is, check yourself for injuries. Check those around you for injuries. And then activate your emergency plan. Contact your family and loved ones that may not be around you. Go to that text group that we talked about. Contact your out of the area emergency contact. If you need to further evacuate from where you are, fall back to your emergency plans and go to that reunification area for your family.
It really sounds like the most common mistake, or at least what I'm gathering, is that people just don't think through.
Some of the things that people do sometimes, instead of the protective action, it's they freeze.
Yeah.
A lot of times we think that people are going to panic. Studies show that people actually freeze and don't do anything more than any other response. So one of the things that we need to do is practice mentally and physically those protective actions and our emergency plans, so that it's more of a muscle memory, that we know this is what I do right away when this happens. One thing that you can do just at home, suddenly, oh, everybody practice right now, there's an earthquake, what do we do? And all the kids hop down and drop, cover, hold on. Yay, okay, good. Now you all get a cookie or a pat on the back from dad. So practice those things. There's an author, Amanda Ripley. She wrote a book called The Unthinkable. It's a really good book. I suggest
Okay.
reading it.
Okay.
She talks about that thing that most people freeze in an emergency, and the way that we overcome that is by practicing. And it can be mentally practicing, going through the scenario, but even better is to do it physically. So that's one of the things that I would say. You can know those protective actions, but unless you've done them, it's not going to be the correct reaction.
Now, you mentioned getting just kind of that information of the emergency. That was a really good point, is find out what is going on. Because a lot of times something goes on, and at least I have, the Ring doorbell thing where you have the app and it talks about like, what was that? Was that a shooting? No, it's a firework. And, kind of goes on. And before you know it, someone thinks the whole city is caved in, right? Like assumptions can happen, people freak out, or as you mentioned, freeze. Where should people get information during an emergency, especially when social media and all these other things, such as is the Ring, is full of conflicting information?
Well, that's true. And social media can be a source of information. The problem is, like you said, is there's a lot. We experienced that in 2020 when we had an earthquake here in Utah. There was a lot of rumors that went out about, oh, there's going to be another earthquake and it's going to be this big. There's no way you can predict that. The best thing that you can do to get correct information, one, if it comes on your phone as an emergency alert, it's pretty good that that's something you need to follow.
Right.
Another thing that I highly recommend people do is go to your county website, your county emergency management website, and sign up to get local emergency alerts.
Okay.
Those are going to be specific to your area. Now, outside of Utah, I'm not sure how that goes, but here in Utah, it's done on a county level. So those emergency alerts will also go to your phone and to maybe your email, whatever you sign up for, and you'll get emergency alerts that way as well. So two different ways. One of them is it's called WIA, or wireless emergency alerts. You don't have to sign up for that one. We often see those with Amber alerts.
Yes.
That's the one you'll get. Other ones, you do need to sign up for your local emergency management website, and you need to sign up for that one. That one will be even more specific information, and that you can get more information on that one, because the wireless emergency alerts, is very limited in the number of text or number of characters that they can put out in text. You'll get more detailed information on those local emergency things. Plus, other things I would recommend: listen to your radio, listen to your television. You get that annoying beep beep beep
Yeah.
that comes across when you're watching Matlock or whatever it is that you're watching. But those are very important. That watches and warnings come across those on your radios. A really cool thing that you can do if you really want to up your game is get yourself a NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration weather radio, because you turn on the weather radio and it's always just that robotic voice that's just constantly telling you what the weather is in your area. But it also puts out emergency alerts, usually that are weather related, but some other ones they can also put out, like earthquake. They would put out an earthquake alert on a NOAA weather radio. You get one that's a tone alert radio, and even when it's in a snooze mode, it'll automatically turn on if there's an alert. So those are three really good things that you can do to get information.
Oh.
Just thinking about radio, sometimes people think, well, I don't have a radio in my house, or the batteries, I went to get it and the batteries were dead in my radio. You always have a radio in your car. So you can go out to your car, turn it on, and get radio information that way.
Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like if we're going to give listeners kind of a do these things, or maybe these 5 things challenge, if I'm hearing you right, it's to talk through how to respond to whatever disasters, go through the scenarios of earthquake and all that. I'm envisioning, as you said, try it. My kids at the dinner table, I'm sure they would just look at me and be like, Mom's gone crazy. But we're going to do it. We're going to do it. So talk through how to respond, then come up with a contact outside of our area, write down the numbers of our family so that we have them on us, as well as put together that group thread, whether it be using an app or text or whatever. Decide places to go, whether that be if we're at home, a local place to go, if we're out, where to go, where our meeting place is. Sign up for those emergencies would be the 5th thing. And then I'm going to add on a 6th thing, and that is start putting up your items, start gathering your items of the water and the
Yes,
food and that radio and flashlights. And I have 1,000 of them, all of those things. So would that be a good starter for people if they're
that
like,
is a
where do
great
we go?
list.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
very good. And a cool thing about that is those first 5 things you talked about costs no money,
Right.
just some time.
Very good
And
point.
if you're starting to put together your disaster supply kit, most of those things you probably already have at home. Now, don't wait until you're able to get the perfect backpack or the perfect water filter, the perfect flashlight. Get a plastic grocery bag if that's all you have. Do this tonight and grab a water bottle, grab a granola bar, throw in a roll of toilet paper, throw in that extra phone charger. What about that old jacket that you don't wear anymore? Throw that in there as well. Maybe a box of Band-Aids. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
You don't want to be complacent and say good enough. You still want to be working towards upgrading and getting it better. But if there's an emergency that happens tonight, you'll be grateful that you have just those basic things together, even in a plastic grocery bag or a cardboard box.
Yeah. Very true. And like in my case, I never know if my daughter's going to be at home. So I can't rely on her to be our safety preparedness, right? Or I even think of one time my kids and I had finished skiing and snowboarding and we were heading down the mountain coming home and there was an accident and we were in over a 3 hour line. And I'm so glad that in the car I had an emergency preparedness. So we had toilet paper, we had some snacks, we had the water, we had
Excellent.
all those things that we needed. So very, very good point. And to your point, the first five don't even cost us anything. So now, Bryan, are you up for some rapid fire questions? So just the first quick response that comes to your mind.
Bring it.
Okay, let's do it. Scenario one, your child is at school when an emergency happens. What's the first thing a parent should do?
The first thing they should not do is run to the school.
Okay.
Check the school's website, check and see what they're asking you to do. Contact your out of state emergency contact and say, hey, there's something happening here. Get ready to potentially receive information.
Scenario two, you're driving home and suddenly the roads become unsafe. What's the biggest mistake to avoid?
I'm going to see if I can make it home anyway. So you may need to just pull over right there where you are. Find a safe place, maybe exit if you're on the interstate. See if you can exit. Keep it slow. We talk to our highway patrol friends. They will tell you slow down and get off the highway as soon as possible. You might need to just plan on spending the night either in your car or somewhere else. If you've made plans beforehand with an emergency kit in your car, that shouldn't be too difficult of a thing other than the crick in your neck that you'll get for trying to sleep in your car.
Okay.
Yep.
Scenario three, the power goes out for an extended period of time. What's one thing you wish everyone already had at home?
Well, of course, we talked about flashlights.
Mhm.
That's when it's you're disoriented. Flashlights is a great thing to have, and backup power for your phones.
Scenario four, you're at work when something happens and can't immediately reach your family. What should you have established ahead of time?
Well, we talked about this. Have a communications plan, and the fallback if you're not able to do actual communication is your reunification plan. Where are you going to meet as a family if you're not able to communicate those things?
Last scenario, you're living alone. What's one preparedness step you would prioritize?
Having a communal support group,
Good.
because then you can all work together. It's always best to be with a group so that you're not going to be able to do everything
Yeah.
for your survival, and you can help other people as well. So establish a group of others that might be living alone or just other adults that you can help and support each other.
Perfect. Here on Holly's Highlights, we like to hear from you, Bryan. If you could go back and encourage and inspire or even equip yourself as a child, what would you tell your young self?
I would say keep it simple. I would say don't worry about trying to do it all perfectly. As I said, something is always better than nothing. Keep it simple. Keep working towards doing better. But no, you're not going to be perfect in this life. So don't worry about that. Just try and be better.
I think we're all getting just that sense that we don't have to be able to be perfect even in the predictions of what will happen when it comes to preparedness either, do we? But we can take a few simple steps today that can make a difficult day a little less difficult. And maybe that's the takeaway for all of us today is that preparedness isn't about being perfect. It's not about living afraid of what might happen. It's about being ready to respond when life doesn't go according to plan. So whether you're packing a backpack for a child heading back to school, sending a teenager out with car keys, heading to work, living on your own, or just simply taking care of the people who you love, a few minutes of preparation today can make a meaningful difference later. Thank you so much, Bryan, for joining me today and just helping us think about preparedness in a way that feels practical and doable.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
And to everyone listening, don't let preparedness become something that you keep putting off. Pick one thing from today's conversation and do it this week. Maybe that's talking through how to respond or who you're going to contact outside of your area, writing down your numbers to put in your wallets or in your students' backpacks, or putting together that group thread, deciding where to go, signing up for emergencies, setting up your items. Just choose one thing to do this week. So, what's one emergency preparedness step that you're going to take this week? Go ahead and share with me on social media. Make sure to tag me so that we can encourage each other to be ready because we can't always know what's coming, and being prepared doesn't mean you're expecting the worst either. It's about being ready when it happens and when it matters. It makes all the difference, and it really helps us give ourselves and the people we love a better chance of getting through it. Thank you for joining me on this journey of life. I hope that today's highlight has been encouraging, inspiring, and equipping so you can go out and live your life full of purpose. I'd be honored if you'd take a moment to leave a review, or better yet, subscribe. We can also stay in touch by joining my email list at hollycurby.com. That's HOLLYCURBY.com. Until next time, make it a great day for a great day.